What's up, divers? Welcome into another episode of Deep Dive Fantasy Football. Today, we are going to be breaking down starts, sits, all that good stuff, some trade targets for you. And going into week 5, I wish you luck. Let's get into it. We're going to start with a little recap of the Bucks and Falcons game. Unfortunately for me, as a Bucks fan, for those of you that know me, Buccaneers lost 30, Falcons 36. Couple fantasy takeaways. I could talk about this game for a long time. There's a lot of takeaways as a Bucks fan and just a lot of things that went wrong in this game. The Bucks probably should have won this game in like 30 different ways, but they didn't. Nevertheless, not going to harp on that. Let's talk some fantasy takeaways. Darnell Mooney is a must flex at minimum. Me and Billy killed that sleeper call in the offseason. I actually threw up a nice little podcast clip from Deep Dive in the offseason when we were talking sleepers. Billy is funny. Billy goes, "Oh, outside the top 50, a guy I got for you, Brandon, is Darnell Mooney." And right when he says that, I give him a hard time because I'm like, no way you just stole my guy. Well, looks like when we're on the same page, it's a pretty good hit. Now, outside of Darnell Mooney, you being able to be confident in him moving forward, putting him in your starting lineups, Bijan Robinson, he is a good buy low. And he's somebody that, we'll talk about later when we're talking about trade targets a little bit, but to kind of encompass everything right now for Bijan, he was limited. You got to remember, he was limited in practice last week before the week 4 Sunday game, and he got a season low touches in that game. And then now he's got a short week and plays on Thursday versus the Bucks. So if he was limited in practice and then for some reason got the least amount of touches he's ever gotten, I wouldn't think that was a coincidence. I would think that's because he's not fully 100% healthy yet. And now he's on a short week recovering from that game, still trying to get fully healthy versus the Bucks, and once again does not get very many touches. So you've got that going on, which kind of indicates to me like, all right, it's going to get better because he hasn't the past 2 weeks probably been at full health. And then also the fact that this whole entire season, he has yet to finish a week, and it's probably not going to happen this week, as a RB1, as a top 12 running back. He is a middling running back too right now. I do think by season's end, he will be a top 10 running back. So for me, because I think he's going to finish a lot higher than what he's currently produced, I expect a lot of things to help that, to aid that process. Not only him getting a boost in touches, but also the fact that the Falcons, their offense is going to get better. And these last 2 weeks, they're throwing the ball north of 70% of the time. That is not going to continue. The teams, and I know this from charting and doing my projections and all that in the offseason, the teams that throw the ball the most are around like 61%, 62% of the time they're throwing the ball. That's like your top numbers, your Kirk Cousins led Vikings and your Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs and your Bengals with Joe Burrow. Those were those teams that were throwing that much. Justin Herbert before, obviously Harbaugh now they run the ball a lot more, but when he had Kellen Moore as his play caller. So that's not going to happen here with this offense. Kirk Cousins is not going to be throwing the ball 70+% of the time the rest of the season. So not only are we getting a probably fully healthy Bijan, which I don't think has been the case the last 2 weeks, but also the fact that the offense is going to give a lot more touches to the running backs going forward. And also, Bijan Robinson's probably going to start collecting some touchdowns as that offense just gets better and better. They were clicking on all cylinders this week versus the Buccaneers. So Bijan for me is somebody that I'm definitely trying to target right now. Rachaad White and Bucky Irving, neither of them should be starting in your lineups unless you are super desperate at running back. They both have talent. They both have their, what they're good at for the Bucs offense, but neither of them, because they're going to continue to split, neither of them are going to get the touches that you need to feel comfortable actually playing them. So unless one of them breaks a really big play or gets lucky with a touchdown, neither of them are going to be somebody that you should be ever really entering into your starting lineup. Now, that's really, other than that, you just have the fact that Baker is letting it rip and still looking good, and Kirk Cousins threw the ball 58 times, so don't overreact to the amount of targets. Of course, Kyle Pitts finally has a good day once it's versus my Buccaneers. He hasn't done anything for 3 weeks, and then versus the Buccaneers, he does a little bit of something. But let's talk some starts and sits of the week. We will go with the starts first. These are guys that you may normally have on your bench that you should consider starting this week, or guys that, okay, yeah, you're always starting them, but they're worth paying the price for in DFS this week. And I'm going to start us off with Dalton Kincaid versus the Texans. Khalil Shakir is out. Dalton Kincaid, part of the reason why he hasn't been getting as many targets as we had hoped is because the Bills have not been passing the ball as much as they're probably going to the rest of the season. I talked about that last week. Said go ahead and feel comfortable throwing Dalton Kincaid out last week. We did, and he was a lot better, and he got more targets, and that's going to continue here versus the Texans. I expect the Bills to have to throw the ball a decent bit going back and forth with the Texans. This might be, who knows, and a preview of the AFC Championship game. It's very possible. Now, I'm not counting the Chiefs out or the Ravens. I think those are probably your top 4 teams in the AFC that you can have confidence in right now is the Texans, Bills, Ravens, because I think they're going to get they're getting the train back on the tracks there in Baltimore, and obviously the Chiefs. So Kincaid versus the Texans, Khalil Shakir is out. There are not too many guys that Josh Allen's going to really be able to go to. And I think they're going to pass a good bit. So he's somebody that I think is worth the price in DFS. Obviously, you're starting him. Trey Sermon versus the Jaguars. This is going to be a very easy matchup. And this is honestly a matchup that I kind of want a lot of pieces of if Joe Flacco is starting for the Colts, which I expect to be the case. So we'll start with Trey Sermon since Jonathan Taylor is out. The Jaguars defense is terrible. And if Flacco plays, the offense is going to have a better chance at playing with a lead. And because they have a better chance at playing with a lead, because they're not turning the ball over and they're having longer sustained drives, which is going to lead to what? More offensive plays and more touches for the running backs. Because if they can play with a lead, they're going to be able to run the clock out. That's going to benefit Trey Sermon. And even if not, if they can sustain drives without turnovers and not be reliant on big plays, then they're going to have a lot more offensive plays, which benefits the running backs tremendously. So that's going to be something that's going to be very helpful for Trey Sermon. I think if you can grab him and put him into your lineup, I would do it because I think he's probably going to be a top 20 running back this week. Josh Downs as well versus the Jaguars or at the Jaguars. So him and Michael Pittman are well worth starting. I'm really trying to highlight Josh Downs here because he's the one that was cheaper that people didn't really have their eye on. And versus the Jaguars, with Flacco starting, he's going to get a lot of targets. They're going to have a lot more passes available than if Anthony Richardson was the guy. Now, who does Flacco prefer? Who's Flacco going to go to? We don't have enough data to comfortably say who his go-to guy is going to be here. And maybe he'll just spread it around pretty evenly. We know Anthony Richardson loves him some Josh Downs, but we'll see. But Pittman, Downs, both of them I like, but because Downs is a lot cheaper, a much cheaper version of Pittman, I would just go with Downs for DFS purposes. Wan'Dale Robinson at the Seahawks. Malik Neighbors is out. Malik Neighbors is on a historic run right now of target share. He is hovering around like 37, 38% of the targets for the Giants offense. That is absolutely ridiculous. First off, that can't continue for the entire season. He'll probably finish more around like 32%, which is the highest that I've seen in the last 6 years. And that was DeAndre Hopkins with the Texans. And Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams have also been close to that. But DeAndre Hopkins had the most ridiculous target shares over the last like 5-6 years. However, Malik Neighbors now being out, we have to turn to somebody else. We have to turn to Wan'Dale Robinson. He's been the other guy that has been getting a lot of targets and has been consistent for you. People in deep leagues have benefited, have loved having Wan'Dale Robinson in their starting lineup. And now they're getting a game where, dude, he might get 16 targets. Because that's what Malik Neighbors was getting with Wan'Dale on the field. Well, if Neighbors is completely gone and they don't have like a wide receiver too that they really just feel comfortable giving 10 plus targets, Wan'Dale might just take a whole bunch. And then you consider that Devin Singletary is also out of this game and they will feel less comfortable turning to the run. So they are going to be extending their run game. You know, the screen game is going to be an extension of the run game, as they say, for Wan'Dale Robinson, and he's just going to be getting his normal targets as well and targets in lieu of Malik Neighbors. Negative game script is very likely. The Seahawks might just absolutely run away with this, and the Giants might be passing the entire time. So, Wanda Robinson, love it. And you've got a possible high-scoring matchup here with Seattle. Dontavian Wicks is another one. I don't think I have to explain this one too much. Most people are fully on board with the Dontavian Wicks blow up versus the Rams. Romeo Doubs is actually doubtful. Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson are both doubtful for this game. That means you're looking at Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks as the two starting receivers. And in DFS, if you really need a dark shot, or a long shot, I would look at Billy's guy. Actually, he's the one who likes him a lot. Kind of saying this on his behalf would be Bo Melton. Bo Melton is going to be the wide receiver 3 in this game with Dobbs and Watson out. So he's somebody to take a look at. But Dontavian Wicks at the Rams, it's a great matchup. The Rams defense is terrible, giving up a lot to every single position. I think they're 27th maybe in points given up to wide receiver. I think it was the Rams that was 27th. So Dontavian Wicks has always been targeted a lot when he's on the field. He is very, very efficient. The only reason he is not always good for fantasy is because he's not on the field all the time, and that's usually because of Christian Watson, who's gone. So that's great. Jordan Love at the Rams, it's a great matchup. He is fully back. He's healthy. He looked the part in terms of health last week. Yes, he had a lot of turnovers, but he also was making a lot of tremendous plays, showing that he's healthy and good to go. So I'm completely comfortable throwing him out there versus the Rams, and he's one of my top quarterbacks on the week. Another quarterback I like a lot to kind of backtrack and go to this Colts-Jaguars game is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence versus the Colts. It's an easy matchup. The Colts defense is not very good. It's a decent over-under, and the Jaguars are favored by 3.5, so they're getting decent points from Vegas, and they've got nothing left to lose. They have beat the Colts every year at home for the last 10 years, and it's time for Trevor Lawrence to let it rip. He has been underwhelming according to everyone. I mean, I'm sure he even feels himself that he really just needs to try to step up, do something, take over a game, and they've got nothing left to lose. They're 0-4. So I think he's going to let it rip and go crazy. Trevor Lawrence versus the Colts. Now let's move over to the Texans-Bills game, and I'm looking at Stephon Diggs. It's a revenge game. I think he's petty, right? We know Stephon Diggs is a little bit petty. I'm sure all week he's been whispering in CJ Stroud's ear, bro, you got to let me get back at those Bills, man. They didn't believe in me. They thought I was done, bro. You got to hit me up. Let me get some touchdowns. Let me go off. Show them what they're missing. Let me just get them back. And I think it probably goes for multiple touchdowns because I think he's been asking for the ball all week, because that's just the type of guy he is. So I think he's probably going to be a pretty good start. Jerome Ford at the Commanders. This is a matchup I like a lot. Jerome Ford is 100% healthy, and he is still benefiting from Nick Chubb not being back. He did return to practice, talking about Chubb, but he is not going to be active for this game. And Jerome Ford has been seeing mad targets. He's had some games where he was above 20% of the targets. So between targets, full health, and an easy matchup versus the Commanders, and I also think this might be a trap game, I think Jerome Ford is going to be a very good play. My boy, Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson versus the Dolphins. Gibson is a go as the starter, which is awesome. I actually recorded on the week 4 kind of, looking at what we learned and all that stuff. I talked about, hey, go get Gibson if you can. I have a feeling Ramondre Stevenson might lose that starting job, especially if he fumbles again. And then about 2 days after that recording was done, oh man, why is his name? Gerard Mayo. His name was slipping my mind for a moment. Gerard Mayo comes out and says, hey, you know what? Ramondre Stevenson's not starting this week. It's going to be Antonio Gibson because of the fumbles. Because Ramondre's got 4 in 4 weeks. So ironically, it happened exactly like we talked about on last podcast episode. Antonio Gibson, the one who lost his job in Washington because he was fumbling the ball, is now benefiting from somebody else's fumbles and getting a starting job. So it's versus the Dolphins. It's pretty decent matchup. It's not amazing, but it's not a bad matchup at all. And him getting more touches because he's the starter, he's looked great throughout the season. Very good. And it's not a game that I expect the Patriots to lose, to get out of their for it to get out of their hands per se. I think they're going to be in the game till the end. They might lose versus the Dolphins, but as long as the Dolphins aren't up by, 14 points at the half, the game script is not going to phase out in Antonio Gibson. And also, if Ramondre's losing his job as the starter, is he also going to be losing the receiving starting role as the running back? Like when they need somebody like, hey, we're going to design a play for a running back target here. It's going to be the first read. It's going to be what we're really aiming for. Is that going to be Ramondre still, or are they going to give that to Gibson now, who we know is a good receiver? So for me, that's a really good play. This is really the week for your running backs stepping into roles between Tyrone Tracy. Oh man, I just gave away the next one. Tyrone Tracy, Antonio Gibson, Trey Sermon. These are guys that are stepping up and I think going to be very useful for you this week. So let's talk about that other guy, Tyrone Tracy versus at the Seahawks. Not only is Singletary out, but Malik Neighbors as well. And it can't all be Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm all over Wan'Dale. I think he's going to be good, like we talked about. He's one of my starts of the week as well. But Tyrone Tracy, there's a huge target space that needs to be filled. And he was a wide receiver for some of his college years, and he's likely going to get a lot of targets. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyrone Tracy gets like 6 or 7 targets in this game, just because they don't really have much else, and they're probably going to be trying to catch up versus a very, very good high-octane Seahawks offense. Now let's talk about sits. We had our positive, everybody that we're loving. Let's talk about some guys I think we should be staying away from. So my sits of the week, these are guys that you may normally start that you should either be benching or at least have low expectations for and completely avoid at their price points in daily fantasy. So the first one, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt the hearts of all the people. He is the QB1 right now. And that's the guy that I am highlighting here to start. Sorry, Chris Pinto. It's Jaden. It's Jaden Daniels versus the Browns. I'm avoiding him in DFS. I'm not completely sitting him unless you have a really good option, right? I'm still playing him in fantasy, but avoiding him in DFS at his price point. This is the first legitimate defense in the Browns that he is playing this year. The best defense he has faced in the first 4 weeks was the Bucs in week 1, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we're a good defense. We're not like an amazing defense. So, and that was week 1. That was the only week that they lost, and their offense was not very good, right? Granted, it was also his first week as a starter, and he's a rookie quarterback. So you got to try to, chicken or the egg, pick, was it not a good week for him because he was a rookie and it was his first week, or because it was a better defense in the Bucs? But the Browns defense is going to be way better than anything he's seen so far. So I think it's a little bit of a trap game. Wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland actually wins this game if Deshaun Watson either gets benched and they bring in Jameis, or Deshaun Watson can just not be atrocious, which that's asking a lot apparently. But Jaden Daniels versus the Browns is my first sit of the week. The next one is Aaron Rodgers at the Vikings, and this one I truly do mean sit. You do not play him at all versus the Vikings. It's a tough defensive matchup. Turnovers in last week's game, in the Vikings game and with the Packers, turnovers were a big part of why Love and the Packers were able to put up so much points. It wasn't like Brian Flores' defense with the Vikings just gave up 30 points to the Packers. And okay, they're not as good as we thought. That was not the case, because Darnold and that offense had some turnovers that gave good field position to the Packers. Special team stuff helped out the Packers as well. Like, there was a lot of things that really just put the Packers in good position to score. So you take away that, right? Because that's not something reliable. It's not something you want to count on. And you're looking at a defense that's very, very stingy. And Aaron Rodgers is not somebody that I have any confidence in being able to just like dissect the defense at this stage in his career and push the ball downfield, be explosive, and be able to just carry an offense. So I think he's going to have a tough time versus the Vikings. I'm sitting him. Andy Dalton at the Bears. I know it's been fun. He's been letting it rip, red rifle 2 weeks in a row, but keep him on the bench this week. Tough matchup versus the Bears. It's a very low over-under of 41 points. Mark Andrews at the Bengals. I've been delaying it, okay? For 4 weeks, I've been delaying it, pushing it off. Week 1, we had the perfect excuse. Mark Andrews is fresh off a car crash. He's getting double covered by the Chiefs. He never does good against the Chiefs. Okay, makes sense that he had a terrible game. No worries, all good. Then week 2, oh man, all right, I get a little more worried. Week 3, okay, this is a problem. Week 4, him and Isaiah Likely, between the two of them over the last 2 weeks, have combined for, I think, like less than 100 yards. It's embarrassing. The two tight ends, their number 2 and number 3 best targets to throw the ball to, have been doing nothing for 2 weeks in a row. So I can confidently say, like, hey, sit Mark Andrews, completely sit him versus the Bengals, or at the Bengals, I should say. And you know what that means. That means he's going to go for 4 receptions, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I swear that's going to happen now that I'm finally on board with sitting him. Just like last week with DeAndre Swift. Everybody finally got on board. All right, let's sit DeAndre Swift. He's not the guy that anybody was hoping for, which I was not drafting Swift. I was off Swift all offseason. But everybody was kind of like, all right, he's done. Sit him. And then he goes crazy and has the best, almost a career day, like one of his best games ever. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens with Mark Andrews. However, I'm going to call the sit. And look, if he goes off on your bench and you sat him because of me, at least you can have some sort of hope and confidence for the rest of the season that he might be back. Jacoby Myers at the Broncos. If there is one thing I am certain of, dad joke, it is that Jacoby Myers will be erased by Patrick Surtain. The Raiders will need to be going to Brock Bowers or Trey Tucker in this game. They have no Zamir White and probably no Devontae Adams, which is why Surtain will be on Jacoby Myers. So I am completely avoiding Jacoby Myers this week. Patrick Mahomes versus the Saints. He might be the best quarterback in the league, but he has not been good for fantasy, period. Going back to last year, stop looking at his name, stop playing him. The Saints have a very good defense. Rashee Rice is out. Don't want any part in this. I actually think that this game's probably going to hit the under, and the bettors also think this game is going to hit the under, and it's not very high of an over-under. It's like 41, I think, or 40.5 right now, and most of the bets have gone to the under. So Patrick Mahomes versus the Saints, you're going to be sitting. Another Chief that you're sitting versus the Saints this week is Kareem Hunt. It's a very tough matchup. I want no part in it. Derek Carr at the Chiefs, also tough matchup. Really, this game is a stay away for me. I'm trying to not have pieces in this game. Now, if you have Alvin Kamara, he's RB1 so far through the season. You got to play him. Chris Olave, you're probably not in a position where you have other options. However, I wouldn't be surprised if that's who the Chiefs focus in on and try to eliminate Chris Olave. So, that's a tough spot. But Derek Carr, you're definitely sitting at the Chiefs. It's a tough matchup. Derek needs the Saints to be winning so that he can stay efficient with the play action game. I doubt that, one, they're going to be able to just get up on the Chiefs and hold a lead throughout the game. And two, I don't think the play action is going to work well versus this Chiefs defense. And that's really like Derek Carr's bread and butter. So for me, he's a sit. Now, we've got the starts done. We've got the sits done. I got a couple little trade things for you here to do. See if you can pull off one of these before these week 5 games. All right, a buy low target. And actually, this one's a tricky one. It's Rashid Shaheed. So the reason I'm saying he's tricky is because most of these guys, I'm trying to get you to buy them before this Sunday happens because their prices might really change. Now, Rashid Shaheed's a little tricky because it's a tough matchup. I'm telling you, all the money's going on the under on a already low over-under number, all of that stuff. So you wouldn't really expect Rashid Shaheed to do very good. But if the Chiefs are just focusing on taking Chris Olave out of the game and removing him, Rashid might be the guy that they are forced, talking about the Saints, forced to go to, and then he might end up still having a pretty good day. So I don't know if I honestly don't have a pulse on if Rashid Shaheed's going to have a good week this week or not. That's why I didn't mention him in the starter sits. I'm kind of just like indifferent. Let's see what happens. But he is somebody I'm trying to buy because he's getting a very good target share. And over this past week, we started seeing him do a lot more than just deep shots. He's doing some underneath, like short area targets. He has some middle of the field targets. He's doing a lot more, and it's making him more reliable week to week. And he's really just rounding out as the wide receiver 2 for this offense. So for me, he's somebody that I'm trying to go buy for the fact that people probably still look at him as like a deep threat, which he's a lot more than just that. Jaden Reed, buying high. I think I might have talked about this last week. I don't remember, but he is absolutely insane. I mean, the dude is so talented. Jordan Love loves him. He's always extremely efficient. He's one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL since he's entered the league. So Jaden Reed, definitely is somebody that you want to try to get, because if people are not valuing him as a top 10 wide receiver, top 12 wide receiver, they should be. And if they're not, go capitalize on that. George Pickens is another buy low target. This is really more residual from last week. He just hasn't gotten a touchdown yet. He's top 12 in receiving yardage. He finally played in a game last week where the Steelers were forced to try to put up points and forced to pass the ball more. And George Pickens had over 100 yards. He didn't have the touchdown, but he had over 100 yards. Very good day. If he didn't have that fumble, he probably would have had another 5 fantasy points, because the fumble's -2. And then he had, the rest of that drive to get a couple more receptions, yards. He could have got a touchdown on that drive because they were inside the red zone when he fumbled it. Very unfortunate. But Pickens I like a lot, and now they're playing the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are expected to put up points against the Steelers. And if the Steelers find themselves in a hole trying to pass the ball a lot more than normal, just like last week, then Pickens could have another 100+ yard game. And if he does that back to back, his price will definitely be going up, and people will start seeing what I've been telling you guys all offseason about this dude. So George Pickens is another buy low target. Jalen Polk, it's just a matter of time before Drake May comes in. And he's been absolutely killing it with his separation. He's been running more routes. So Jalen Polk is somebody you should be looking at. And then, like I said earlier, Bijan Robinson, he's somebody I'm trying to buy because he's a middling RB2 right now, back end middle. And I think he's going to be a top 10 running back when the season's over. 2 sell high targets for you. These are guys that will not be worth their price for much longer. One is Jared Goff, and the other is James Conner. James Conner is not really getting the receiving work that a lot of people were expecting him to get this year, and what he has gotten in the past for the Cardinals. That makes him a very dependent, like matchup-based Cardinals, game script-based type of running back, which I'm not a fan of holding on to. So James Conner, I think, is a pretty decent sell right now. See if you can get somebody like, for say, actually Bijan Robinson. If you could do James Conner plus a piece, like James Conner and a flex player that you have for Bijan Robinson, I would absolutely do that. That's something that you can explore. And then the other one is Jared Goff. So he's got a really bad schedule coming up. He hasn't been as good as people probably would just assume if they don't actually go look at his stats. So for me, that's kind of what we're working with. And Jared Goff just had that 18 out of 18 game, the 18 attempts, 18 completions, right? So people are gonna be like, wow, that was so good. That's fresh on their mind. I would use that to sell him. So that's your buy lows, your sell highs, your starts, your sits of the week, and what we learned from Thursday Night Football. Thank you guys for listening to Deep Dive Fantasy Football. If you can, if you're on Apple Podcasts, help your boy out. Click the rating at the bottom, scroll down a little bit, just woo, 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 woo. Hit that 5-star review for me, and then hit that write a review and put in a nice little comment. Tell me what you think of the podcast. Leave me a review. I would appreciate it immensely. It means so much, and it really does. I mean, it motivates me, and it's just awesome to see those reviews come in. And then if you want more from me, you can find me Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Belly Up Fantasy Live will be on with Chris and Billy, going through every single game, guys to start, guys to sit, all of that stuff, breaking it down. It's like a 2-hour thing. Come pop in. It's live. Drop a comment, all that stuff. Thank you guys for listening to Deep Dive Fantasy Football. Drop a rating, drop a review, share with a friend, and good luck in week 5. Peace.